Well, hi, good morning. I am Elizabeth. I'm the Global Engagement Pastor here on staff, and we are so glad that you're here with us this morning. If you are new here, there's a tent right outside as you go in, go out, or come in that says new, start here. And I would suggest that you start there because it says it right on it. And there's somebody there who can answer all your questions and get you more connected here. If for some reason you can't stop by the tent, you can also scan this code right here and it'll open up a text that you can send to us, and that will get you connected with one of our staff members and who can start dialoguing with you. So welcome to stop by the tent or scan here. If you've been here a while, you know how useful our app is. If you haven't downloaded it, you should give it a try. It connects you with all the information about what's going on in our church and actually tells you the stuff that you can sign up for and what's coming up next. So download our app. It's got all sorts of great information on it, including Next, which if you are trying to get more connected at our church, Next is a place for you. It's what comes next in your spiritual journey with our church. We provide lunch, and we give you, there'll be a couple of pastors there for you to get to know and just answer some questions about how to get more involved in our church and how to take those next steps in your spiritual journey toward health and growth in our church. So it's Next, and guess when it is? Next Sunday. So next Sunday, after the 11:30 service, lunch for you and your family just across the parking lot in the multipurpose room. Hope to see you there. Also, if you've been waiting to sign up for Rooted, don't wait any longer. They start this week. All of the Rooted groups start this week or next week, and there are a few spots left in a couple of the Rooted groups. So get online today. Today's the last day you can sign up, and find an open spot and sign up for Rooted. I promise you it's going to get you more connected with community, more connected with God, and it truly is, as we've been talking about, life-changing for many, many people. So if you haven't signed up for Rooted yet, let me be very clear. Today is the last day to sign up. There are only a few slots left. Get online and do that. Get on your app or on your dashboard on your computer. As the Global Engagement Pastor, I really, really want to say thank you for the way that you give. Because of your giving, you're influencing and impacting people around the world, really the nations. In a couple of weeks on our patio out here, we're going to have a craft fair where we're selling crafts from a bunch of the missions partners that we support around the world. And so come check it out, maybe buy a few crafts. Just as you're giving to our church, if you give to that, that actually also goes to all of our partnerships around the world. And you'll get some cool stuff that are highlighted from some of the places that we have people serving. Also, we are selling local stuff, so if you are a crafter or would like to sell stuff at our craft fair, come and talk to me after, and I'll give you the link to sign up. That's September 25th, craft fair on the patio. Also, speaking of our global partners, don't tell any of our other partners, but my favorite global partners are here today, and that's John and Casey Campbell. We have been connecting with them. Our church sent them about 12 years ago to Sierra Leone in West Africa, and they've been working there ever since, working with clean water and taking Jesus to people who don't know him yet. And I just love them. They're raising their 4 rambunctious young boys in Sierra Leone in West Africa, and John is here today to give us an update. So let's welcome John Campbell.
Good morning. It's always exciting for Casey and I to be here. This church has a special place in our heart. I was baptized here. I met Casey as part of the college ministry here. After we were married, we led the college ministry here for 3 years before we were commissioned and sent out by this church to Sierra Leone. So it's so awesome to come back and just see familiar faces and see so many new ones that have come in the 12 years that we've been gone. I want to share just a little bit about what we do in Sierra Leone. We've been there for 12 years, and God's done amazing things. When we first went, we joined a family that had been there just for a short time. We were starting kind of a new work. We were invited to come and help. My background's in engineering, and they had a water facility that had been damaged and vandalized during a decade-long civil war that set Sierra Leone back to zero, basically. And so water's been a big part of what we do because it's just such a huge need. About 7 years ago, we started a water company, actually, that provides water to public points and even into people's houses in a town called Waterloo. Waterloo has about 125,000 people. We're providing water to about 80% of that city. And then we also drill wells. It's a big need, especially in the more rural areas. We drill wells with hand pumps. And we use this also as an access ministry. You can see some pictures here. These are college students from the Corner ministry of CCUF here that came and helped us drill a well in a new community. And this opens up doors. This is a new community that we now have a relationship with, that we are able to go in on a Sunday morning and teach and share the gospel. The church planting is why we're in Sierra Leone, sharing the gospel and loving people and meeting physical needs as well. Once you show people that you care, it really opens up a lot of doors. This village, we now have a Bible study. We have really deep relationships with about 25 different villages, and we have churches in about 10. And this is really incredible. It's a predominantly Muslim tribe. There's less than 4% of believers in this people group, and so it's amazing to see what God has done in a relatively short time. As we raise up these new bodies of believers, there's a bit of a vacuum as far as biblical knowledge, and so a number of years ago we started a Bible Institute, and it allows people to come. It's a week long every month for 2 years. And people come from wherever they're pastoring or wherever they're teaching, and they come to Waterloo. They learn for a week, and it's basically like a 2-year seminary degree to be able to build leaderships, build Sierra Leonean Christians that can shepherd these new bodies of believers. And then lastly, about 7 years ago, I'm sure you guys heard about this Ebola outbreak, and Sierra Leone was severely affected. Thousands of people died, and there was many children that lost one or both parents. And so there was this crisis that we saw this need, and we stepped in, and we started an orphanage home with about 44 kids that we provide their education, their housing, and do our best to mentor them in the Lord. So this is a small snapshot of what we do. Casey and I and the boys will be out on the patio after service. If you'd like to just come say hello and introduce yourselves, or if you have questions about what we do, we'd love to hear. Or if you'd like to sign up, we have a newsletter that we send out only a couple times a year that just has updates and prayer points. We'd love to have you sign up for that. So thanks so much for having us.
Good morning. John, thanks so much for being here. And we got you bounce houses for the boys. I said that joke last service. They laughed then. Glad you're here. We do have bounce houses for your kids or you if you just don't hurt any of the children. I'm Chris. Just glad you're here. If you're here for this holiday weekend, you're just traveling through town or up from some really hot part of the state, we just welcome. We're glad you're here. We've been talking for the last several weeks about how you and I can have life-changing relationships with other people, with God's Word, the Bible, how to have a life-changing relationship with Jesus now in the present tense. And I realize that for many of us, as we've been talking about this, or you're just maybe here for the first time, you've been at a couple of these, sometimes we run into this question, right? Is life change even possible? And maybe you don't think, in our darkest moments, we think, none of it's possible. But sometimes I think most of us struggle, where I found myself at many times in my life kind of stuck, is I think, well, the life change, the stories that we hear, or the things that people like me talk about, those are for other folks. You come to church and they talk about, hey, you should, and life change, and you go, no, not for me. I felt that way, I know, because, and it's not always some dark place, isn't it? It's just this routine of life. There's many parts of my life where I just know, I just felt like this is probably all there is. I'm going to work and try to do that well. And I was always working as a pastor. It's all I've ever done since I graduated college, is work in churches as a pastor. I thought, well, that's important, so that's good, but But my life became, sometimes this is grind. Maybe you can relate. It's like I'd take my kids to their things. When they were younger, it was baseball, dance, and taekwondo. And nothing's better than watching 5-year-olds try to kick each other and they miss, right? Because it was awesome. We'd put them to bed and we'd watch some TV. I'd try to romance my wife. I'd go to sleep and get up and do the whole thing over again the next day. Go to work and take the kids. And I'd come to church, and for the first 18, 19 years of working in ministry, I almost every week sat where you're sitting and would attend church with my life group and my family, and I'd listen to other pastors and other teachers talk sometimes about life change, and I'd go, yeah, this is probably like it for me. Maybe you feel that way. And then somehow, I think almost accidentally, I just found myself being the person who is trying to convince you that following Jesus will indeed change your life. And that it is a team sport. It requires training and effort, but it comes at no cost. It's completely free. And what I sensed over and over again, I started to notice this pattern, is when I felt stuck on that question, can my life still change? What more does God have for me? He always put a story in front of me that reminded me of who he is and what he does. Even recently, I talked to Celeste, who's one of our student ministry team members, and she was at CIY, which is our summer camp, with a bunch of our students and other leaders, and she was telling me about this young gal who the very first night they have a worship service. They go into the session, and this gal can't go in. She's not from a Christian background. She doesn't really know really have a relationship with Jesus. And she's just there with some friends who brought her, and she's nervous and she's anxious. And Celeste is talking about how she just wouldn't even enter into the room on Monday. Thursday, she's calling her mom and saying, "Mom, can I get baptized?" And her mom asked her, "So, well, are you doing this because your friends are pressuring you, or because they're getting baptized?" And she told Celeste, she said that she realized this was the first time in her life that she was doing something of her own, like her own desire. It wasn't for her friends, for her family. She said by the end of the week, the girl who couldn't go in because of the anxiety of going in the room and what was unknown was singing the songs, was worshiping. And Celeste said she had a light in her eyes that just wasn't there before. It's just been a few weeks, right? It's just starting. She's reading the Bible. She's texting her leaders and the people who help on Monday night. She's texting them questions about the Bible, what she's reading. She begs her mom every Monday to bring her back to youth group. I talked to Nick this week. He's in his 40s. In February, just a few months ago, he started coming to church, and he was in the middle of a really painful, traumatic situation in his life. And he just showed up one Sunday and just asking for help and direction, and where do I go now? And he got connected to Wednesday mornings. We have a men's Bible study that meets here. And I've heard that they meet here. It's really early in the morning. I've never actually joined them. And there they just pointed him to this living word and this lens of looking at God's word through Jesus. And they built relationships around him, and for many of us, like Nick, we always think of our relationship with Jesus as this past tense decision impacting our future tense eternity. And he's seen and described when we got to talk on the phone this week of just how amazing relationship with Jesus in the present tense can be. He said for many years he avoided church because he grew up in a religious background that just said, "Hey, you're really bad. You should feel guilty for how bad you are." That was the message he heard. I know no one stood up and said those words, I don't think. But that was the message many of us heard, right? And he said, "Why go someplace to just have them tell me how bad I was?" So I didn't go to church for a really long time. He always believed in God. And in the midst of things that would cripple almost all of us on our own, When I talked to Dave, who leads that group, he said Nick is displaying amazing joy, amazing peace that can only be described and accounted for by the life change you find in Jesus. Or we could talk about the corner. We could tell the story of Ryan, who was living what I'm just going to call the snowboarder life. And if you know what I mean by the snowboarder life, you know what I mean. He knew God, and he said he hadn't talked to him in 3 years. And at a low point in that life that seems glorious and awesome, right? And it wasn't. He felt God tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, Ryan, it's time for life change. And Ryan somehow ends up at the corner. This is what he said. He sent a text to Joel, who leads that ministry. The corner wasn't just an encouragement. It was a looking glass into what living for Jesus looked like. And it was amazing, and it grabbed me. Is life change possible for you? Or is it just for other people? It was possible for a young lady in high school, for Nick, for Ryan. I could have told you about a bunch of other folks. I see it happen all the time. And I just want you to consider, why couldn't it be you? Why couldn't what God is doing in other people's experiences also be your experience? Not just people who are really far or new to him, but people who have been walking with him for a really long time can experience and have experienced, are experiencing in our midst incredible life-changing relationships. I think of it this way. Here's just a way to picture it, quite literally. So not that long ago, I was at the Grand Canyon up at the North Rim. Anybody been to the North Rim? Hey, it's better than the fair. Like, the fair's pretty awesome. The Grand Canyon, both, all the whatever side your part you can get to is amazing. And I was over the North Rim, and I got up early. A couple of the mornings I was there to just see the sunrise. Like, if you ever get a chance to, if you're ever there and just get up, watch sunrise, go back to bed after that. It's the way to live. Right? In this picture I took, just on my phone, I don't have any filters. I don't know how to do any of that. I mean, I guess I do, but I don't use them. And this is just before sunrise. And I want you to realize and think about, like, you know the canyon is dark at night, right? There are no street lamps on any of the trails. In fact, it's so dark that miles away, I was looking at people's flashlights as they were hiking in the middle of the night. And I was like, what, why? And then last service, someone was inviting me to do that with them. I was like, no. They're like, I'm one of those people. I hike it at night in the summer. I'm like, cool, you're awesome. I prayed for you. And right before the sun starts to actually rise, it starts to, like, the light illuminates the canyon. Like, it's not crested up over the horizon yet. And what was dark starts to become more light, more visible. You can see your way around, but it's not quite all the way there, right? Because a few minutes later, this is the same angle, just I zoomed in a little bit. Like, you can see the difference, even in, like, my non-filtered, non-professional 2 pictures, right? Like, kind of hazy. It's not actually hazy. It's just not daybreak yet. You can see. And I think for us, for sometimes this is kind of the picture of life of, I made a decision for Christ. I'm going to spend eternity with him, but in the middle of it, it's not as bright as it could be. I mean, because this picture does no justice to what you would have seen that morning if you were standing next to me. Or really any morning it's not cloudy. You see an amazing scene. You see colors and vibrancy and just this brilliance. Once the sun is up, like, you can see in the bottom right, look, there's still a shadow. And some of us are like, I'm content living in the shadow of what God has to offer me. I'll just take the minimum. We live in this not quite bright light. But we could. This isn't a perfect situation. Life isn't always the way I want. But what I've found and what the people in the stories I've shared with you, and many of us have found here together, is that the more and more that I put Jesus in the center of my life, it gets to look like this. It's not perfect. None of the people I shared their stories, they would never stand up here and go, oh yeah, I'm ready for sainthood. That's not how it works. But when I put myself in the center and I just do kind of the stuff that I like, I'm settling for this because you realize you and Jesus are the only two centers of your life. That's the way I've come to understand it. You can say it's my family, it's my kids, it's my career, it's this group that I serve. It's this other, no, that's just you. That's just me. It's either me or Jesus. And me in the center, it's just not as good as Jesus in the center. So how does it change? What does it take to experience what you hear others experiencing? And what I thought was really interesting, and I didn't even ask for this, but I suspected it to be the case. When I talk to people about their stories this week, they have three things in common. They all had the same three things in common. And it's just the things we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks together. You see, they all changed the answer to this question. Can we identify the people, the relationships that are helping us follow Jesus more than we did yesterday? Do you have names? Like the people that come to my mind, they were here at last service. We're in a life group together. We identify with people who are helping us follow Jesus. The people in the stories I just shared with you all changed the answers to this question in the last season of their life. And then they all started looking at the Bible through the lens of Jesus. And they let the living word change their life. Because I can bring all sorts of lenses to this, and so can you, and we don't even do it on purpose. My experience, the shame and guilt that I grew up with, or that you grew up with in religion, or your politics, or the way you wish things could be, or what all kinds of things. And if you just look at it through the lens of it's all about Jesus, and it's all pointing us to him, it can change your life. It's not a duty. It's not a thing to check a box. And then the third thing is they got to this question and like, no, I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait to heaven to let God change me. Will he perfect you and change us completely then? Yes, that's the end of the change he has for us. But he tells us in this word of his and what we watch is there's change. There's a more brilliant, vibrant life today available for every single one of us. Letting your connection with God be in the present tense, life-changing, not just the future tense based on the past tense decision. And I'll just tell you, I can't emphasize enough the role that something like Rooted, and if you don't have answers to those questions, and that's why we have Rooted, just to platform you to find those answers, to experience the life change that you could. Last week I was looking at, we were looking at together, John chapter 10, right? If you were here. If not, Jesus said things like, I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. That's what Elizabeth reminded us of as we celebrated communion together. Jesus died for us so that we could have life change, so we could put him in the center and not be separated from God. The verse before that, John 10:10, says this: the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. If those are the words you feel like are happening in your life, maybe even at some small level, or you look at our culture, you look at our world, you look at the state of things and go, someone's stealing, killing, destroying. Let's just make sure we blame the appropriate source. All throughout this teaching, Jesus is talking about the thief as the thief and the robber, they are the enemies of God. The forces, the real forces of evil that follow Satan. But he says, I have come. They may have life and have it to the, oh yeah. Right? Like, and what some of us run into, and I've run into this at different seasons of my life, is I hear this, and I'd hear somebody else talking about life to the full and stories of life change and jump into this thing and that our church does, and your life will change. And I know for some of us, you're just hitting some context. You go, well, that's great for you, man. Like, you work here. But my marriage sucks. My teenagers are going down the wrong path. My grandkids, I don't like what I'm seeing. Our finances just, they're so horrible. My job makes me, takes away my, life force. It's killing me. Right? We have all these real life things. We're busy. I'm glad Jesus died for me, Chris. I really am. I just need to get through today. Can you help me get through today and feel a little better? It's just life in that almost daybreak. And we can feel like it's the only option. He came so we could have life and have it to the full. But you and I are involved in that happening. It's not something magically he just puts on us when we start to follow him. Life isn't always blessings and rainbows. But he offers a way of life. Like, life to the full is actually, Jesus describes many times, and the New Testament writers describe many times, it's a way of life, of following Jesus. And I've just found, and you would find if you jumped into this, or you have found at different seasons of your life, that what he offers, it involves training, which is never earning. The way of Jesus and his life are full of paradoxes. It's intentional but not burdensome. It's never passive, but at the same time, it's peaceful. Is life change possible for you, for me? Yeah, it is. And I hope today you'll do the things that allow it to happen. To allow Jesus to bring the change in your life that he wants to bring. We're going to end our time singing the song of worship called Christ Be Magnified. And as we worship, the prayer team will be in the back where the lights are on. It says prayer. You can join them, and I've seen people doing that each service. And you want to sign up for Rooted, you want to talk to someone at New Here Tent, all that. But these are some of the lyrics of this song that come in one of the verses. Because this life, this idea of God changing our life, of Jesus being in the middle, in the song is described as every creature finds its inmost melody. Every human heart, its native cry. It's this picture of a song that works, right? All the pieces are harmonious, and that's what we celebrate when Jesus changes our life. It's moments and seasons of that. It's like going to hear have you ever gone to a middle school band concert? Yeah, that's not this. Because there's a few pieces just out of melody, out of tune, off the right rhythm. But sometimes, God, when we put ourselves in the right context, we put him in the center, we get hymns of praise. We sing Christ Be Magnified because we're experiencing the change he has for us. Our life is full of color. It's vibrant. We're not just making our way through the almost daybreak. He has that for each of us, and the response is always to worship. So we're going to worship, and if that's not where you are today, then let's worship, asking him to bring melody and harmony and praise and life change that we need and can only find when we put him in the center. Would you stand and join the team as they lead us in this song?